Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Ted Budd, Congressman from North Carolina's 13th Congressional District. I'm joined by my friend Russ Vought, former director of the OMB, Office of Management Budget under President Trump. But he is now the president for Center for Renewing America. And we've got a very important topic today that we're going to discuss, and that's CRT, which is critical race theory and the threat that it is for our nation right now. So, Russ, glad to have you here. Thanks for bringing this important issue to our nation, or before us, our audience today. This threat to our country, it's pretty important. And there's a lot of misnomers and thoughts about it, but love to hear what you're seeing with this for Center for Renewing America, and talk to us a little bit about CRT.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Critical race theory is something that really has taken on quite a bit of momentum within our country, both from the standpoint of the left's putting it into our cultural institutions and now the fight to get it removed. But I think it's, let's take a step back about what it is. Critical race theory, for your viewers, is the rejection of the civil rights movement effort towards a colorblind society. It's the desire to go back to a way of looking everything through a racialized prism. And as a result, you no longer have the ability to be a colorblind society where everyone is judged by the content of their character instead of the color of their skin. So that's why this is such a big deal. And the critical race theorists really began to say, look, the radicalness of the leftist agenda got stalled out because of the definition that was in law or by the legal elites with regard to what constitutes racism. And they wanted to say it's not prejudice based on color of skin, it's any racial disparity. It's anything that is not equitable.
I was getting ready to ask, so that leads to that new word that we're hearing surface, equity. Not equality, but equity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we would say, equality under the law is what we want, a colorblind society, and then everyone has the ability to have the most opportunity in this country. They're looking at it from just kind of any disparity, and then there's an assumption that's based on race. There could be a lot of different reasons for why that disparity exists. Some could be solved by policy, some might not be able to be solved. But that is why you see the Biden administration then say, every decision we make at, for instance, Office of Management and Budget is going to be done from the standpoint of equity. It's really critical race theory as practiced in the federal government.
So it's not, we think of EEOC or equal opportunity that we've been thinking about through those parameters over 20, 30, 40 years, but now this is about equality of outcome.
Right.
And so why the shift and why now?
Yeah, it's been a long time in the coming. The left likes to argue right now that this is just in their law schools. It's not. It did start in their law schools, but it really has something. This is based on critical theories writ large that has been in our schools for about the last 100 years. The progressive left has been trying to push these radical theories. It's a critical view of the country. Essentially a view that this country is not great, that this country has systemic flaws, and as a result, what is necessary to be able to pull these institutions down. And we saw that last year with riots and lootings in our city, is when this is fed into the citizen body for that period of time, great hostility to the civic order results from it.
So I did a telephone town hall last week and had a great call. African-American gentleman had served in our military, had served in the police force. And he said he is a Republican, he's a conservative, but we need to have critical race theory as a way to deal with previous injustices. So my take, and I'd like you to maybe add to this, was, look, we need to have the discussion about flaws in our country without realizing that our country is, or without coming to the conclusion that our country is systemically racist or systemically flawed. So I said, yeah, we need to have those discussions about slavery in particular, but we need to get beyond that about how we build a future together. What would you add to that if you were in that conversation?
Yeah, I've had similar conversations along those lines as well. And this is, first and foremost, this is not an effort at all to say that we're not going to deal with the history of our country, to teach slavery, to teach Jim Crow, to teach the civil rights movement, what the civil rights movement was about. This is a rejection of a paradigm that is indoctrinating. So our view is that we want to be able to continue to teach history even more accurately and have any kind of discussion about racial reconciliation that's necessary. What we reject is the view that we're going to indoctrinate our kids, our government workers, our employees through HR departments with purported facts. So we don't go out and say that the earth is flat and you're just going to have to accept that as fact. There are things that constitute indoctrination that we are opposed to, and our hope is that this will lead to more conversations as people can to enter these types of back and forths without in the back a paradigm that suggests one class is the oppressed and one class is the oppressor, that one class is privileged and the other class is unprivileged. That's the paradigm that when you enter a conversation like that, it really shuts down the type of conversations that we would all like.
So I've thought that, look, our country is strong militarily. Our country is strong economically. Yeah, we've had some bumps in the last 18 or two months or 2 years. But if you want to attack our country, you need to do it from the inside out. And our national motto is e pluribus unum. So out of many, one. You could say that's out of many states or colonies, and we're now one country. Or you could say out of many types of people with different backgrounds, we're now one people and one citizenship as Americans. So it seems like it's the devolving of that e pluribus unum, out of many, one. It seems to fracture us rather than bring us together. But you were saying this has been in our system for, I think you used the number 100 years. Why are we only hearing about this, let's say, in the last 2 years, when it's been going on for maybe 100 years before that?
Critical race theory itself started in the 70s and 80s, emanating from Harvard, Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, Richard Delgado, and others in other law schools across the country. That over time gets picked up into outside of the legal sphere, and it gets into our schools. Our schools are there are many different examples, and I can share some of them. But the individuals who come out of the universities go into their jobs and they practice it. They call it practice of critical theory, and that's why we're seeing it now. And then government was used in the Obama administration to further it with executive orders to say that diversity inclusion plans need to be put in place. Those require you to contract with nonprofits that come in and teach this kind of indoctrination. Then you have school teachers and doing the same thing. So it's really kind of accelerated in the last several years, and I think also events in our society have also been a part of furthering that. People wanting to do everything they can to not to be able to foster racial reconciliation. They look for what else is on the shelves, and these are the kinds of things they come across. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing it now. But it's tied to 100 years of, I think, cultural Marxism that really was built around the concept. We're never, from the liberal elites, that we're never going to have classic Marxism in the United States. We've got to come up with something that is has greater potential in America, and that is to divide us on the basis of race and identity and political identity. And so it's the same Marxist framework of oppressed versus the oppressor, but it's not on the basis of economic class. And that's what's been in a long time in coming, and then the effort to achieve cultural hegemony through our institutions over that time.
So for those who are pushing the theory, do they really want equality or equity, or is it something else that you think they want? First of all, who are they, and what do you think they ultimately want for those that are pushing these theories?
Yeah, I think that they're moving towards a socialist Marxist governmental approach. I mean, I don't think there's any way to describe it other than that. Ibram Kendi talks about getting rid of capitalism. And he views, in his kind of distorted view of history, he views these as twins, racism and capitalism that have fed off of each other, and as a result, we can't really have that historic part of our country if we're really going to be an equitable country. You've seen what Black Lives Matter has on their website. They're trying to have the downfall of the family as a traditional aspect of a civilization. So these are the things that are their long-term pursuits, and I think it's incumbent upon us to recognize that and do what we can to oppose it before they get any further.
Has the system that they promote, they want to destroy or ultimately change this system that we have here, but the one that they promote, socialism, Marxism, has it worked anywhere? I mean, a little bit of a rhetorical question, but has what they are promoting worked anywhere?
No, and it's led to great violence and bloodshed. It's amazing. We conservatives are the ones that have to defend our system as the one that works. And it's been the fundamentals of this great country. Yeah. We don't have a Cuba that we have to defend. We don't have a Venezuela that we have to defend. We don't have a Detroit and all of the pathologies that we've saw in a failed city like that we have to defend. And so these are the things that, they just, find ways to explain away. And unfortunately, over time, their idealism has impacted our schools and our university in a way that we're really playing an uphill battle right now. But encouragingly, I've never seen the American people rise up with more concern and more courage than they are right now in this fight against CRT.
And I'm seeing, as I talk with other members on the House floor, I mean, Congress, a word meaning we all come together. So when I talk with those from around the country, they're saying they've never seen more energy for their people back home, their constituents that are stepping up to run for their own offices, for school boards, county commissions. And I just think that's a great reactive movement, very positive, that people are saying, no, we're not going to destroy this country with a theory that's never worked. Something interesting from a business mentor, I was listening to a podcast of his recently, and he said you would see the word envy all the way up until around, you would see it popular in literature up until around 1850. And he said, then you saw the disappearance of the word. It's one of the 7 deadly sins, right? But you would see it disappear around 1850 or diminish in use, because that's when you saw a rise in socialism and Marxism take off. And essentially it legitimized envy into a political system. So it became normalized as a way. How does envy play into socialism, Marxism, and even CRT?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, and I look at on the you plot that date on 1843. Marx basically says, our strategy is going to be criticize everything, to bring at our analysis of events and institutions this cynicism of criticalness, not in the sense that you and I might criticize something because we're trying to improve it, but a criticism to be able to bring it down. And the whole point of it is to be able to convince elites that something wasn't great, something wasn't good, and as a result they should have change. And to your point, envy was a part of this. It's not just we want to improve our country, but we want to envision what it should be on the basis of all that it, we want it to be for our own personal gain, and to go about it from that standpoint.
I mean, you look at capitalism or free market systems and opportunities. Some people don't like the word capitalism. I think we actually need to teach why we can use that system, even though it was named by its enemies, the term capitalism. But we need to teach that, look, not just, we don't want to, if you look at socialism or Marxism, it says being based on envy. I don't want what that other person has. I want them not to have it. And there's lots of Russian literature and jokes that says about destroying or burning someone else's house down. It's, just, you want them to hurt. And that's the way you achieve equality. Let's go back to kind of what your role was in the Trump administration as director of OMB. So you're directing funding for the federal government. One of the bills that I've signed on to recently has to do with stopping the funding of CRT. It's Dan Bishop's bill. He's a colleague of mine in North Carolina. And I think he's done great work, and he's seen very concerning that in the federal government, at our military institutions, including Naval Academy and the USMA, the West Point, we're seeing funding of teaching around critical race theory. So what should we do in regards to funding those things that I mentioned specifically, and more broadly in related to funding to stop this threat?
Sure. This is a fight at every level, to the point of your questions. Local school boards, state legislatures, and now the federal government. President Trump signed an executive order to ensure that the federal government was not funding critical race theory in its trainings. At the military, they'll have a lot of these symposiums where they bring in these individuals. It could get even worse than that, where they're forcing government employees to write apology letters to each other. I mean, it's just complete nonsense. And you'll see it in contracts and grants. And so that's what the executive order was about. And Dan Bishop's bill, as you mentioned, is to enact to make a statute out of the president's executive order. And that's really what we're trying to do as part of this appropriations process this year. So it was an important role, and honestly, it gave me an opportunity to have a government-wide perspective. We do budgets, we do regs, we also do anything that involves multiple agencies at OMB, and to put guidance in place that allowed an agency head to be able to say, okay, what do I need to look for? Because it never says critical race theory. Here we are, here's ROAR. It says, buzzwords, equity, diversity, inclusion. Those are the kinds of things that anti-racism. You and I would think of, if someone asked us 10 years ago, are you an anti-racist? We would say yes. But anti-racism has a technical term from Ibram Kendi that you really have to be on the lookout to see, is that indicator of CRT paradigms.
It's racism by another means.
Exactly.
It says,
racial discrimination is okay if it's in
but it's the reverse of what we thought of as racism
exactly.
before. I think we have a couple of questions coming in, and so what do we have here?
We actually had a question from Shannon. She asked, will teachers be censored in how they teach Wilmington or Tulsa?
No. Particularly in terms of history, this is not in any way about excluding history. This is getting better history to the extent that teachers are bringing in those types of facts and situations. All of that would continue to be taught. This is about, and if you read these bills, this is about certain concepts being and paradigms from being indoctrinated, suggesting that individuals are different based on the color of their skin. I would challenge anyone who's on the other side of this issue to say why they believe that concept should be something that is a part of teaching frameworks.
Yeah. Well, I think you have been hugely helpful today, and I want to thank you for this. We want to wrap up, and this is a topic where one question or topic leads to 10 more. So let's continue the discussion at another time, and I appreciate all of our guests being with us today on Facebook Live.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Russ.
Yep.